Welcome. Today on Alethea Radio, addiction, getting to the root cause. And in today's news, someone attempts to murder Justice Kavanaugh, and Matthew McConaughey speaks out at the White House. This is Off the Books.
And thou shalt be saved.
What's up, people?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Alethea Radio.
To Alethea Radio.
How is it going?
How's everybody going?
So, how are you guys doing this week?
I'm doing great.
Awesome.
Ray's here.
Ray is here again.
Caesar's here. I'm here. We're all here.
Yes. So, yeah.
Welcome.
So we've got, we're going to talk about addiction today. We're going to talk about, which is a topic very near and dear to me.
Yeah.
So we're going to get into that, and we're going to get into some current events first.
Okay. What do you want to talk about first? Kavanaugh?
Yeah. So that was pretty bizarre. So apparently this week, actually, I have a little bit on it right here, which is pretty interesting. Oh no, I'm going the wrong way. Oh, technology. Okay, so apparently what happened this week was there was a guy who they caught him before he went to the house. He was trying to actually kill Justice Kavanaugh, which I find his causes are ironic. But let's see. I
think it was just like an armed guy that was close by, right? And then they
well, his intent was
he said it was his intent,
he
right?
said so. So I got something here from the Daily Wire. It says the criminal complaint against the man who allegedly wanted to assassinate the Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh was released on Wednesday, only hours after he was arrested. The offense description from the United States District Court of the state of Maryland stated attempts to kidnap or murder or threatens to assault or kidnap or murder a United States judge, to wit, a current justice of the United States Supreme Court. The complaint named the alleged assailant as Nicholas John Rosk, and he stated as he called the Montgomery County Emergency Communication Center, telling them that he was having suicidal thoughts and a firearm in his suitcase.
Yeah, and you know what he told the officer?
What?
He wanted to give his life purpose.
Yeah, which honestly, we were just talking about that last week about purpose, but I find it ironic. His reasoning behind going to kill Justice Kavanaugh was his views on gun control, says the guy who's carrying a gun, a knife, and all sorts of murder weapons, and his stand on abortion. So I can understand. I can't understand why he would be so gun-ho for abortion. He's a man, technically, by societal standards. He can't speak on that.
Really?
Well,
yeah. Well,
That's
yeah, exactly.
That's the standard.
Exactly.
I mean, listen, I don't want to make light of a terrible situation, but I think the fact that he was just released hours after just goes to show you, like, mind you, this guy said he was going to kill him. He came with things to kill him.
And he said that he felt that this would give his life purpose.
And he was suicidal, and they released him.
Right.
They care about you.
That's justice. I mean, I think that happened here in New York. That happens here in New York a lot.
It happens all the time.
All the time. And the mayor of New York City actually
Eric Adams.
Yeah, he just went down to Albany to fight for that. He made a statement basically saying that enough is enough. We need to do something about the criminal justice system because we could do stuff about gun laws, but if we don't do anything about that, the ones that are not following the law and getting illegal firearms, they're being arrested, being let out, and still doing the shooting. He said they're actually more likely now to commit that crime than they were before. So now he said what Adams said was that nobody's taking the justice system seriously.
Well, and listen, I don't agree with a lot of the things that Eric Adams says.
No, but the point was he's
right about that.
He went to Albany, and he's a Democratic mayor.
Yeah.
And New York is full powered Democrats in Albany, and he went down there and they shot him down.
Yeah, well, that's evidence. That's evidence of what the truth really is. I mean, if you can't see that, you're not looking for truth. I mean, if you say you want to help people that are struggling Well, the one thing that you can do is put forward legislation that's going to protect people from these things happening and get to what we're going to talk about today, the root cause of the problem. That's the most important. What do
That's
you
a-
think about all this, Mr. Ray?
What I find kind of goofy and ironic of the whole thing. Oh, I hear music there.
Sorry. I
thought it was in my head.
I'm all over
So
the
anyway,
place.
they want to take guns away from people that are legitimately registering them, coming forward with them,
Yeah.
but allow everybody, because criminals aren't going to go and register their guns.
Yeah, no.
No. And then with the southern border opening, how many guns are coming across the border on a daily basis? And those aren't guns on the books or anything.
No.
So they don't want to go after any of that. They just want to go after people that have that are responsible and register them.
Yeah. And you see, and that's a weird thing because I mean, ultimately, guns are instruments of death, but they can prevent more death from happening in the right hands.
Well, they're
And
a tool. Some people look at them as a weapon,
but listen,
some people look at them as tools.
Well, they are, but here's the thing. I mean, regardless, the language still comes down to an ultimate thing. Listen, they are tools of death. They're made to kill. Now, I don't want anybody to die, but also I don't want anybody to put themselves in a position to die. So how about we start by really having conversations of why we put ourselves in position to die? You know, I think that's the most important.
Well, or take a life. I mean, like this guy that was going after Kavanaugh. I mean, he felt that taking a life would give him purpose. I mean, I think that's a lot of these mass shootings is, you know, what purpose did they have besides that would give them some sort of
you have
purpose?
the news and the media constantly going off on someone like a Kavanaugh, and even other politicians. Oh, Kavanaugh, hell's coming down on you. Remember when Schumer did that?
Schumer, yeah.
No, but they're constantly on the one side. They're rousing people into an anger, hatred / riotous side. But then they point at conservative people and say, "Oh no, you're the problem."
Well,
but
because
there they are riling everybody up on the other side.
That's because the language has been so skewed behind it, and what I mean by that is, like for example, like a conservative. People say conservative in two different respects. Number one, you want to keep the world in the Stone Age. That's their argument. Number one. Number two, they're looking at conservatives as that we're looking to conserve a way that doesn't work anymore. Well, my argument is this: look at the way things are working right now. How's that?
The way a Christian should look at it is,
well, that's the point.
And we're a preservative.
Well, think about this.
Not a conservative. We're preservative. We'll be the salt of the earth.
The guns aren't the main issue. It's their agenda behind the guns.
Yeah, well, I don't want to get too into that because we're actually going to talk about that today.
Real quick with the governments.
Yeah.
So if you take a look at Germany, Nazi Germany.
Well, historical,
they took all the guns away from the people. Russia, before they became communist Russia, took all guns away from the people. The Chinese, before they became communist China, disarmed all their people.
Yeah.
Cuba, when they became communist, they disarmed all their people. Venezuela, when they took over,
it's a pattern.
They disarmed all their people.
Yeah, that's going to be difficult here because I mean, there's a lot of people that stand for.
But it's an agenda bigger than that.
Well, I mean, I think we all have an agenda. Like I have an agenda. My agenda, honestly, is to spread truth. My agenda is search for truth, and to get to look at things from all aspects and to discover things that offend me and to wonder why they offend me. But the problem that we're having is we're not getting people that are looking to search that far to the point of offense. Before the offense happens, they duck away from them and they isolate themselves. And this is the condition of the heart.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of what we're going to speak about tonight is addiction, and where we kind of seem to always try to medicate the symptom rather than actually going after the problem. It's the same thing with the gun issue. It's the same thing with the drug issue. I mean, instead of tackling the root of the problem, we go after some ominous issue that really is the surface of what's going on. It's really not going to handle it. So, I mean, in addiction wise, how does that relate?
Well, Well, addiction, I mean, speaking from personal experience, I mean, I had a serious drug problem. I let it devastate my life. And I know the one thing that I spoke about recently in the men's group fight club that we have is that it's called Fight Club.
Is it really?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, because hey, listen, the fight is not ours, but you got to fight.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So what it is I had been isolated away from everything I knew, and I had been immersed in scripture and all these things, and it really, really challenged me to a place that I've never been challenged before. Not only was I going through physical withdrawals from opiates and heroin, and mental withdrawals from crack cocaine, I was going through I was going through a spiritual battle that I had never encountered before because, and I was telling Sean this before, the drugs weren't the problem. It was like God had to clean the drugs up out of me first so I could address like the real messed up things that were wrong with me. Once the drugs were out of my system, I was like, wow, I'm still a messed up person.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that we're afraid to deal with in the world. Do you want to talk about Matthew McConaughey first before we dive?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so Matthew McConaughey went to the White House.
Okay.
And listen, once again, I don't agree with a lot of the things he says, but I think he did very well.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was genuine.
One thing that I did said that I really liked was he said this is not a party issue. Where a lot of people make it like, oh, it's the left, it's the right, it's the Democrat, it's the conservative. It's really not a party issue.
Well, that's good because I don't party anymore.
Yeah.
So neither does Washington.
Neither does Washington. So this is Matthew McConaughey.
Are you hooked up?
Hold on one second. Am
Come
I
on,
hooked
man.
up?
Come on,
I
man.
am hooked up. I thought I was. I thought I was. Okay, so anyway, we're gonna run that back.
Run that back.
I'm just all over the place. Where is this? Where on earth is your? Oh, there it is.
Can we just talk about it?
Yeah, well, he's got a clip he wanted to play.
Well, yeah, I just want to play a little bit of it.
Of these lives matter. My wife and I, Camilla, we spent most of last week on the ground with the families in Uvalde, Texas. We shared stories, tears, and memories. The common thread, independent of the anger and the confusion and the sadness, it was the same. How can these families continue to honor these deaths by keeping the dreams of these children and teachers alive? Again, how can a loss of these lives matter?
Okay, so I think starting off right there, like how can a loss of these lives matter? That's not something that most politicians are addressing right now. I think they're saying, okay, something happened. How could I use it to boost my platform? They're not asking themselves the question of what can come out of this that can be beautiful.
What he said that was so profound was, instead of looking at re-election, how about you look at the people and what they need?
Well, yeah.
Something to that effect he said in the speech. And my head went back, like, he called them out. He said, both sides, you need to stop doing things for re-election and do your jobs.
Well, that should.
And he's speaking on the upcoming elections in November, because each side is taking something
on their
and using it towards the election.
And I just think it's really incredible that I've watched that, and I just have this urge to buy a Lincoln right now.
Yeah.
So
right.
All right. So
on that note,
so addiction. Okay.
Yes.
The definition I looked up, and I got the etymology of the word of addiction. It's derived from a Latin term for enslaved or bound to.
Awesome. Hi, Sandy.
Hey, Sandy. And actually, in Roman law, to be addicted or addiction was a person that became enslaved through a court ruling. So you were judged about whatever happened. You were judged, and you became enslaved to something or someone, or you had to do something to live out your term for that court ruling.
Yeah, well, interesting enough, the language, and this is the important thing that we were talking about, the war on words, is the language is really, really important when you look at the original core meaning of it. Being chained to something, having an addiction issue, is a type of enslavement. It's almost like biblically what we call a stronghold,
or where many times it's mentioned you're a slave to sin.
Absolutely. And listen, being there, it's not a good thing. I lived it hardcore, and the one thing that I remember was it's just constantly saying to myself, like, well, I'll get to it later, I'll figure it out tomorrow, or I can't let anybody know. Listen, when you are immersed in sin, trust me, everybody knows. Everybody.
Yeah.
Your pastor knows, your friends know, your family knows, even the people that don't want to admit it know.
Yeah.
You're not fooling anybody.
Well, when we look at also addiction, we look at things like alcoholism, sex addiction, drug addiction,
food addiction,
pornography,
food addiction,
things like that. And those, I think that those are like just the symptoms of a root problem with your heart, which is sin,
absolutely.
And you become bound to or enslaved to that particular addiction. And even nowadays where addiction is becoming more prevalent even in technology, whether it's video games or just
there
your
is
phone.
A new classification for that.
There is.
Yeah. It's a video game addiction classification. It's a new thing.
Really?
And it's actually serious, because what winds up happening, like any other addiction, is you go for the dopamine rush, you go for the feeling of achievement. So for example, like you get a little kid, excitement, you get a little kid who's not very social. Where does he get his gratification from? He gets it from achieving a certain level or upgrading or anything like I love
interesting
games.
Yeah.
So what they did is they actually, it's not classified as like a substance abuse addiction, but it is a classified addiction now, gaming addiction.
Yeah, well, in our realm of our worldview, Christian worldview, that's anything that's other than God, and you putting an idol in front of it. So if you decide to put anything above him, and you do that more than you try to seek his knowledge. We were talking about this earlier, where the Bible talks about the partition in your mind, that you could be double-minded, and that partition in your mind is one side is that addiction or that sin, and the other side is the mind of Christ, and not sometimes that partition, you get stuck inside that other part.
And you can't allow God to take over the largest areas of your mind, because you're so filled with the things that are just desires that you crave due to the carnal nature of you.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting, because a lot of people, like we can discuss like the language quickly on what that means to have an idol, to put that against God, to not have God as your primary thing. I mean, it seems boring to a lot of people, and it's really not. And here's the reason why. So when you put God first before all your other thoughts, what that means is that usually the things that we gravitate towards are the things that are the most unhealthy for us. It's the things that get us stuck in strongholds, and really do, no pun intended, have a strong hold on every single activity you do in your daily life, because you start planning your life around these things instead of living life and running into new things happening.
Right. And that partition that I consider like a wall, it's a wall that's built up. It's fortified with that sin, or fortified with those thoughts. And like you said, it becomes a stronghold. So I just wanted to read real quick in 2 Corinthians 10, that's, where we get this from. It says, I beg of you that when I am present, I may not have to show boldness with such confidence as I count on showing against someone who suspects us of walking according to the flesh. For though we walk in the flesh, we are not waging war according to the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not the flesh, but have divine power to destroy strongholds. We destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God, and take every thought captive to obey Christ, being ready to punish every disobedience with our obedience when our obedience is complete. So those are
I was gonna say, break that down, because that's a lot.
That's a lot, because that's the stronghold is preventing us from the knowledge of God. So we go to church on Sunday, we get a good word. it's for that one day, it stays with us. If we don't continue in that word during the week, that stronghold that's in our mind is stronger. We don't allow the word of God to penetrate that, so that our knowledge of God increases.
And that takes obedience.
And that takes the obedience of what we heard and then applying that during the week. A lot of times we go to church and that's the only word of God we get. And during the week, that other stronghold, which is always going to be in our minds, in our flesh, it's
give that more time than you give actually the word and listening to the meaning behind it.
Right.
And that's like when the Bible says, I believe that's in Proverbs, when a double-minded man is unstable in all of his ways. Yep. It's such an important passage because let's think about what it is to be double-minded. I want to become a swimmer, but I hate the water. Well, you're gonna have to figure something out. Being double-minded is a wild thing, because I was double-minded. I thought that I could get high but still have a normal life. I thought I could be a bad person but still have a good life. And those things never worked out. And I mean, listen, you wind up affiliating with people that don't have the best intent for you. And a person's intent towards you really reflects in the things that they show. And you refuse to even pay attention to that when you prioritize something like drugs or whatever type of addiction is over that.
Well, yeah. I mean? So one of the ways to free ourselves from that stronghold, Jesus mentions in John 8, he says that if you continue in my word, this was saying when you're at church, you get the word. If you're not continuing in his word, it says, if you continue my word, then you will truly be my disciples of mine, and you will know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Right. And then if you go down to 34, it says, I say, truly, truly, I say to you, everyone who commits a sin is a slave to sin. The slave does not remain in the house forever. The son does not remain in the house forever. So if the son makes you free, you will be free indeed.
Wow. Yeah. That's something else.
Yeah. So, you continuing in that, how do you set yourself free from being a slave to your addiction? How can you be free from that double-mindedness that is set in your mind? Because it's always going to be there. It's just those chains that are binding you can be free if you seek the truth.
Absolutely. Example. Any examples?
Not this minute. I'm just listening.
Yeah. So it's if you seek the truth. So, and it's he said, if you seek my word. And that word is growing in the knowledge of Christ and knowledge of God.
Well, talking about, I mean, I'm not that new of a convert, but I'm decently new enough to know to remember exactly what that felt like.
Right.
Because I didn't want to do it, but I was also surrounded by people who did it, and I was constantly surrounded by people who lived it. I mean, there were, myself included, everybody's like, oh, this is brainwashing. And past used to say, like, you need to have your brain washed.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
It's kind of a weird way to put it.
It's a weird way to put it, but it's right. That's one thing that a lot of people when I spoke to is you're being brainwashed, you're being, indoctrinated.
It's like, I'm glad I've been brainwashed my whole life to believing that I was purposeless, that nothing I did had a point to it, that everything was random. Right. So what makes this any different?
I mean, do you ever go through this? I mean, as a Christian, we go through our ups and downs, and you're new as a Christian, but not that new where you probably haven't experienced this. But when you stay away from God's word or stay away from
things go downhill.
You know it starts happening. You feel it.
Starvation.
Those things start resurfacing.
Exactly.
So it's kind of like a war going on, right? And then the enemy starts getting a foothold. It's called a foothold.
Your attitude changes.
Yeah, and
everything.
and once they start getting a foothold, you're fighting back. And what does the Bible say? It's not a physical war.
No, it's not a battle of flesh and bone. It's a spiritual battle. Like,
it can affect you physically.
Definitely.
Oh, it can.
Yeah.
Yes.
I agree. Yeah, it can.
Yeah.
I feel like when I'm not when I start getting addicted to certain things in my everyday life, like the little things, and I want to do them more, and I know it's taking me away from the one thing that saved me, I immediately feel shame. And I
Yeah.
don't think that's a bad thing. I
No,
just don't think you should stay
That's
there,
conviction. Yeah.
you know? And so like for example, so there's physical elements to addiction as well as there are spiritual, because it's what we're talking about, the battle between the flesh and the spirit. But like our brains, like God designed our brains, he hardwired us to live and to pursue certain things in life, and the only way he could have done that is to wire our brains the way he did. Like for example, like sex addiction comes from a basic need to reproduce, to connect with someone physically in the most intimate way possible. This is not something that's random. You know, it's just what happens when you separate yourself from the intent versus something that is self-gratifying momentarily.
Right.
Like anything temporarily gratifying is a problem because it's only going to suit you for the moment, and there's nothing in longevity that seems like an actual real reason to do it.
Right. That pleasure that it's just like in sex addiction, that pleasure, that momentary pleasure is similar to drugs, you know, or alcohol. It's that momentary pleasure that you're getting because you feel like it's going to eliminate your anxiety or your stress or take the edge off somehow just from the world, right?
Yeah.
You seek it in that moment.
Yeah, and you seek it in the moment due to the physicalities of your design. Like some people will say, like, "Oh, the reason why we do the things we are, it's just chemicals." Well, yeah, we're trapped in a meat suit. Of course, there's going to be things that are explainable, and I love it because people always try to separate God from science when God is the creator of science.
That's like the perfect picture of the beginning, like we talked about it before, Genesis.
Yeah, the garden,
right? The garden. It's the perfect picture of that because God created these things to be glorifying to him, to be wonderful for us to experience wonderful things in our bodies and feel these ways. But we took it and we distorted it.
And we corrupted it. So every day we come in contact with the knowledge of good and evil. We were talking about it in respects to being children, growing up, and when you become accountable to what you know, the knowledge about good and evil. But the fact is, the story is not just that moment. It's actually symbolic to every single encounter we have in life. Once you decide to know the other side of something that is good, you're going to wrestle with it. And it's very important that you learn how to wrestle if you're going to intervene in the plan with that.
Right.
Like, so
definitely.
By Eve, for example, by Eve being tempted and taking the fruit, don't you think like we all say, oh, wow, okay, well, it can't be that bad. And it sounds just like what God said. So like, it can't be bad. Yeah, it can't be bad. It's not bad right now, but it can become bad once you obsess over it. It can become bad once you discover that there is a bad part of it. And
I mean, that's how drugs start, right?
That's how I started with
yeah.
that.
Hey, it can't be that bad.
Yeah.
I can handle it.
Yeah.
We can be addicted to good things too.
That's God's plan.
But then we could take them too far, which becomes a bad thing.
It's like eating.
Yeah.
Eating.
One of my favorite things to do lately.
Well, even exercise.
Yeah.
Even exercise. Exercise
can
is
become
great,
addicted.
but people become so addicted to exercise, they that's their life.
That's why I said it's a form of idolatry. You take that instead of seeking God and you put that above it.
Well, you see, and that's the constant renewal of our minds point right there. I think like if I find myself like I've been not eating too much, but eating unhealthily and stuff like that. So now I have to start working out. I have to change my diet. I don't want to trade one addiction for another. It's funny because when I went away, one of the things they had in the house was like, listen, you get 1 cup of coffee. And I'm thinking in my head, like,
I need at least 2.
I'm like, man, this is all I got.
Right.
This is all I got, man. Like
coffee.
You're gonna take that
You've
away?
never
from
been
me?
to a Baptist church.
And they were like, no. Yeah, right. Mad coffee. At a Baptist
mad
church.
coffee.
But that was the thing. I was like, man, coffee too? Like just string me up by the neck. But the whole point was like, listen, listen, don't try to sneak another cup of coffee. Don't try to sneak anything. They're trying to teach us something.
Right.
That's a dope fiend mentality. And me being a person who was there, I said, wow, well, that makes sense. So it's a rough thing. Like, and it's crazy because there's so many people out there right now that are going through what I went through. And I remember thinking that like there's no way I'm going to get out of this. There's no way I can end this without destroying, without literally I have to let go of every single thing around me. And that's exactly what you have to do. You have to take the things that you are holding more valuable than what God has given you, and you have to free yourself of it if you ever want to truly be at peace.
I mean, that's what Jesus says. He says, by my word, and the truth shall set you free, and not the truth that we say is
not
like
your truth,
not your truth,
the truth,
the truth, what is actually true, and then that changes you. That changed me, where you see it and you're like, and it's a continual thing.
Yeah. And that's what I love when people come up to me. They're like, that was you? I'm like, yeah, that was me. I can't see you that way. I'm like, that's Jesus, man.
Yeah.
That's what it's
that's
all
who
about.
You're seeing. Right.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. Like, you're not just seeing this extremely round middle on me. No, you're seeing something way better than that right now. You're seeing Jesus, but that's the thing. And I didn't realize it was him until after it had been done.
Yeah.
I look back at my life and I was like, wow, I remember being in this situation. Why did I make it out of it? I remember being around bullets being fired. I remember being just being involved in violent acts, drug dealing, like you name it. And I had to come to an understanding that I can't do bad things and expect good outcomes. And this is the problem with society today, which makes addiction so difficult. I mean, even internet addiction, like you want to get likes. It's actually proven that the like button and the hearts that pop up on the internet, that those release dopamine.
Yeah, I could see that, because even like a movie, you watch a movie
crazy.
and you get, where your movie, what makes you cry or makes you so happy. And, I love watching movies. So it's like, you go through the emotions of it, and I'm an emotional guy. Ever since Christ touched my life, I've been an emotional guy. I'll hear something. We were at an award ceremony last night, and it was actually not an award ceremony. It was my daughter doing scholarships, but they were doing scholarships in memory of people. And some of the people that they were talking about, I was just like, man, I just started getting like choked up, and I was just like,
they did great things.
Yeah, they did good. Yeah,
I love hearing that.
Yeah, stuff. And it felt good. But but even hearing things or smelling something, you get that.
And let me tell you, so the first I went through withdrawals for like 41 days, I think it was, and I remember like bumping into one of the guys in the program I was in when my wife was there, and he was like, "Yo." He was crying like every day for like 3 weeks. And I never forget it. I was like, what is going on with me?
Right.
Like I was withdrawing, but yet there's these strangers, these people I don't know, coming up to my bed at night while I'm shaking and laying hands on me and praying over me. And even though I didn't believe at the moment, I was just like, why would they do this? Because they were doing what they were supposed to do. They were imitating Christ. They were saying like, this is the guy I want to be more like. This is the guy I think you should be like. So even if I don't know you, I'm going to show you that I can care for you and love you anyway. And it touched me so much. I just sat there like, wow, like I hurt all these people. Like these people have no idea the things that I've done. And they're just treating me like I'm just as good as them. And the whole point was like, no, they're treating me because we're all not good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm like, wow, like that blew my mind. And I think if anybody ever is going to watch this, that is going through an addiction and you feel there's no way out, trust me, like let it all go. Anything that you think is worth holding on to, it's not. Like, and trust me, I let go of a lot. I let go of like everything, my entire life, everything that I had quote unquote built. I literally just left it to the winds and went away. And
because I think that's a great analogy for contentment, right? So, when we can be free of our addictions is knowing that we can be content whether we have or we don't have, or whether, our circumstances are great or they're terrible,
Mhm.
being content in those times, we can defeat those urges and those temptations
Yeah.
of those addictive tendencies.
I want to go into something we talked about earlier, talking about all the addiction and stuff.
Yeah.
You had drug issues.
Yes.
I had alcohol issues before going into the military.
Yeah.
You had issues.
I have a lot of, I had all three.
Did you?
I had all of them.
He had all the
But those-
issues.
I had all those issues.
But you can't fixing those, like we talked about earlier. Fixing those is like fixing the leaves on a plant, which a plant doesn't get healed by fixing the leaves.
Yeah.
It gets healed from the root up.
Right.
Mhm.
So if the root's not healthy, the whole thing's going to die anyway. You can have
Yeah.
nicest leaves in the world. The whole thing's just going to fall over.
Yeah.
So I think people need to understand what you saw when they prayed over you was hope.
Yeah.
You saw hope because you have one thing, you have despair on one side and hope on the other. So despair brings you down that path
Yeah.
where hope can open you up to a different path because you can't have the healing without the sight of hope.
Yeah.
And
You're
that's
right
where
about
us
that.
as Christians give them a glimpse of the hope we have
In us. Yeah.
in us for Jesus, because nobody's going to just stop doing drugs and think that it's going to work and last, because it's still, they could stop the drugs, but there's something else is going to take over.
Definitely.
Until they have
Definitely.
hope and get that the root issues, whether it's
It's identity, it's pride.
correct,
It's
Right.
those deep issues,
issues, yeah.
those deep ones, and and the thing is, you got to be honest with
Acceptance
yourself
issues, yeah.
and understand, okay, yeah, this is my issue. No, it's just because the world says it's good.
well, that's
No, it's my problem. It is a problem. And
Yeah.
I recognize it's a problem. And that's the first step, is recognizing you actually have an issue and not just saying, nah, everybody does it.
Yeah, and when you truly, you know what, and you hit it right on the head, is that you're giving people a glimpse of hope that they don't have, and that's what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And ironically enough, like those core issues, like I realized that it was easier for me to do drugs than realize that I was insecure. It was easier for me to get high than it was to realize that I had severe acceptance issues and that I was holding on to things that I had no business holding on to, like being bullied. I had no business holding on to that. That stuff happened so long ago. And finally, when I came, and I love how we constantly say, like, when I came to the knowledge of Christ,
Yeah. That's
you
what
know,
it is.
to the knowledge of Christ, what that means is the knowledge of understanding human nature is that these people did things to me that they only do because we're all equally as
Evil.
messed up.
Yeah.
And so what wound up happening was I started to understand, like, man, this person, the only reason why they did that is because they're hurting, they're sad. And then I started to feel bad for them. And I was like, wow, like this person did something so terrible to me only because the truth was just never explained to him. He was never told that that he didn't have to act this way, that that's not how a man acted. This girl didn't reject me because I was less. This girl rejected me because she was sick and she was taught that her body was her only asset,
Yeah.
that her value wasn't held in her creator.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then I started to understand, like, wow. So when I came home and I looked around, I started seeing people's faces. I was like, you're sad, you're depressed.
It's like putting on
You're
those glasses, right?
I saw-
Like
yeah.
walking around, you have these glasses on now that you kind of see it, where it's like, wow,
Well, yeah, hence the word from a biblical
lens. Yeah.
or through the lens of Christ. Like, yeah.
I'm gonna flip the view just a slight bit.
I love it when you do that. Flip it, Ray. Flip it.
I'm gonna
Flip
flip it. I'm gonna flip the flapjack.
Oh, now you're making me hungry, man.
Fit the flapjack.
Don't start talking
So-
about pancakes.
Some people that have addictions and or idols, or to that extent,
Hmm.
some people, it comes from them being hurt physically, emotionally, maybe all three of them, abused by parents,
Denial. Like people being denied.
very
presence of-
abused,
Yeah.
very bullied,
Yeah.
and there's things, and then we find a place because we don't have hope. So
Yeah.
we find an outlet ourselves, and normally get sucked into an outlet thinking that will cover up
and
the pain and suffering.
yeah.
So not everybody just goes out and looks to be a drug dealer.
But you just brought up something so great.
Not everybody's woke up one day and said, I can't wait to be a drug abuser today, or an alcoholic, or a sex addict, or I can't wait to just watch all the porn in the world.
Yeah.
Things sometimes happen in your life towards you that maybe you weren't the aggressor. Maybe you weren't the one actually sinning at the time, but then you get caught up because you got hurt so bad and you don't know where to go or how to handle. So you do what you think society's telling you.
That's
to
what I was
treat
about
yourself.
To say, yeah. And sometimes it's the same thing that was done
and
to
now
you.
You're now in a double ditched hole because not only did somebody hurt you and you're not healed from that major root issue, as we we're talking about that heart issue, the thing that's punished you.
That's not how you choke a microphone, Ray.
So
that was a good sound effect.
Think about like people that are abused as children.
Well,
sexually.
That's what I was going to say.
And they end up, a lot of them end up falling into categories
and
of doing stuff that makes them, when you really get down to the nuts and bolts of it, they're not happy. They're miserable because
they become
that
addicted to
issue,
abuse.
Correct.
Yeah.
And they even abuse themselves now at
Absolutely.
this point. And sometimes even become
That's
abusers
the normal.
to others.
That becomes the normal,
It's
yes.
because they don't have that vision of hope to come out of that pit.
Because they still feel helpless in the face of their prior abuse.
Yeah. Right. And they don't see the truth.
Yes.
Well, most importantly, and it's funny because like in human nature, like we have been designed a certain way to experience these things, to be able to overcome them through God, which I think is really important. But what winds up happening is like you'll find like for example, I know some of the manliest men that become more submissive sexually in their relationships because it's the only place they can show vulnerability, because they're actually terrified to do that in public in fear of people not accepting them. And that's a really, really that's a really crazy spin of a place to be in, because you know, here it is, you get this gift from God, this gift of connection through God, and you're using it as an outlet to display something that you fear displaying in your everyday life. And as Christians, we know submission is key. You know,
that's the obedience. That's the obedience that we're talking about.
The guy, I don't have all the information, but the guy that's coming to the next men's group, he wrote a book, and it's called I believe it's Never Quit, Always Surrender. You know, he's a Christian jiu-jitsu. I'm sorry, I was not prepared for this.
That's all right. No,
but he's really awesome. He's coming to our church for the men's group.
Oh, nice.
And he's an international jiu-jitsu champion, and phenomenal testimony. Wait till you hear this guy's stuff. It's incredible.
Nice.
But I think that's important. Submission, and having the right outlet to express submission, because most men don't have, I mean, and women too, excuse me, I don't mean to exclude women as well. Human beings in general, sometimes we don't have a correct outlet to express where we want to be submissive, because we're scared to submit to our weaknesses. When what we should do is lay them at the cross.
Lay them at the cross, yeah. And that's what we were talking about before, about obedience to the word, hearing it and being obedient. Being submissive, being submissive to God is being obedient.
Yeah. And that's the hardest part. Like, that's the challenge of our walk. But that's the part that also no one ever said was gonna be easy.
No, it's very hard.
Yeah. And it's crazy. So like, as far as like addiction goes, I think that's why the conversation, as broad as it is really important. Like, so like when you're talking about different types of addictions, you have to understand how our personality like looks towards certain things, like, because everybody has their own personality, their own qualities, their own defects and stuff like that, and we all have to work within our own boundaries, and it's all unique in that sense. But the certain things that are not unique is how God designed our bodies. So I was talking before about the dopamine, right? So so dopamine is one thing that we go after, but for example,
I think that's the largest
That's the largest factor
of
hormonally.
addictive.
Yeah.
Addictive personality.
But also what works hand in hand with that is something called glutamate. So what glutamate does is glutamate, it seeks patterns. Like it's the one chemical that pushes you to seek patterns. So in gambling addictions, what winds up happening is there's no gambling in random things that are happening, but yet you're searching for it. So that chemical creates a desire to find a pattern in something that doesn't have a pattern, which is also part and parcel to our design as
That'd be
being
video
creative
games
people.
too. That's also
video games too. Yeah. Creative people in general, we search for patterns that in places that don't have patterns, and then we start thinking incorrectly due to not finding any equation about it. And what I mean by that is like artists, for example. Like I'm an artist. Like I paint and stuff. Well, I haven't painted, but you get what I'm saying. Like we look for. Have you ever been to an art exhibit?
Yeah,
it's crazy. Like a lot of it is just like. A lot of it is crap. I'm not gonna lie, because like it's like somebody will splatter an element that was probably not meant to be on canvas, and people will go up to it and it's like, yeah, I just feel like it's saying.
You know what? Which ones I like? I like is when they take the objects and they set them in such a way that you see it, but when you just move, it's
now
something
those
different.
those drive me nuts.
That takes
insane.
a lot. That takes a lot of work.
You know who I like? If we're gonna talk about art,
okay.
The landscapes, like someone like Bob Ross, the big guy at the big afro and the happy face.
Bob, you just have to say his name. You don't even have to
Ross.
You say Bob Ross, we know afro.
But he could see what God put on this
beautiful
earth
little trees,
and then put it on a canvas and say,
he was an army guy like
this.
You too. You know that, right?
Yeah, he was actually a special ops guy as well.
He was special.
That's why he saw beautiful trees.
He's like,
and beautiful.
I've seen way too many rifles, daggers, knives.
But art is a great expression, and it's a good way to.
And it's important to society. I think artists play a major role in society. The problem is, I think intellects overdo it.
Yeah,
that, and I think a lot of artists are very hard on themselves.
Yeah, I think the academics are getting like overly artistic in thought. And I think when you start creating irrational trains of thought and you start seeing them as truth, I think that's dangerous.
We've had thousands of years
of messing up,
of people trying to reinvent truth over and over again. And there's one truth to everything. There's the truth, and there's everything else. And everybody keeps trying to reinvent the wheel. It's kind of like, I'm going to make an analogy that's funny about this. It makes me think of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer when they go to Land Misfit Toys and the choo-choo train with the triangle wheels. All right, that's what humans do. They make the triangle wheels and go, "Oh, this is better."
Why did you remember
that? because that's us as humans. Like, now, like, look at all the things that we're warping in today's world as truth.
This is such a great point. That's why I like having Ray around. It's us
putting triangle wheels on and go, no, that's better.
Okay.
When the round wheel has always been the right one truth wheel. Okay. We try other shapes.
So let's talk.
There's got to be a better wheel.
Yeah. So let's talk about our triangle wheels. Okay. So in the sense of seeking things that give you momentary gratification versus what God's word offers you as the long-term solution to joy in your life, the triangle wheels of my life came from the things that I asked from God. Yeah. And here's what I mean by that. I had a conversation with a pastor upstate, and he says, wow, man, he's like, your story is pretty crazy. And I was like, you know why it's crazy? Because I asked God for the Chinese food of words. He said, what? I said, my prayer was like Chinese food. And then he looked at me because he kind of knew where I was going. I was like, it filled me up for a half an hour, and then I was hungry again. I never asked God for anything that was permanent.
Right.
Like I would ask God, oh God, just get me through this night. God, get me enough to get high through this night. God, give me enough for tomorrow. Let me get through this week so nobody finds out. Don't let these people see me now. I never said, God, give me what I really need and not what I want long term.
Right.
If I had asked him for the truth, I would have gotten it. Because I recall in so many instances.
You didn't want the truth.
No, I didn't want the truth.
That's what it was.
I was able to get large amounts of money to get drugs on a regular basis, but I never asked him for the solution. So why would I get it? we don't receive because we don't ask.
Yeah.
It says that in James. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Is that James? I believe that's James.
It might be, but
No,
I think Jesus said
Jesus
that.
said it.
Jesus
I
said,
think in John,
knock
Book
and
of
ask.
John.
Yeah.
Oh, is it John? Sorry.
Yeah.
I was one of the J's. You know what I mean? It was either Jesus, James.
There might be another piece in James somewhere where it talks similar. To
I believe it
Yeah.
does. But that, like, you know, when I read that, it resonated with me because I was like, here I was, going through withdrawals in parking lots, shaking it out in a concrete room in the middle of the worst place I could possibly be, surrounded by people I should not have been around, you know, and I never asked them for anything that was a solution. I only asked them for temporary fixes. Like, for example, I never asked them to put me around better people because I didn't want to be around better people, because being around the people that were using like I was, I always had somebody to compare myself to. Well, I have more teeth, or I have, you know, like
more
no,
weight.
seriously, like
no, yeah,
more weight, or you know what I mean? Like, I remember, like,
I'm not as bad as you.
Exactly, because I would spend so much money on drugs. It got to a point where it was so bad to maintain my habit, costed me so much that I would substitute drugs for food. So I would get these small meals that I could have, like cereal, peanut butter and jelly, and you cannot live on that.
And I think right now that's why the fentanyl is so bad, is because it's so much cheaper. People can,
but it's a faster high.
It's
too.
A faster high.
It goes away a lot faster.
That's why it's so
you wind up
dangerous.
needing more, even faster.
It's so dangerous.
It's cheaper for a reason. It's cheaper because you get high, you get sick faster, and you got to go back for more. It's nothing like the real thing.
Yeah.
Let's just show how sick our society is. I'm going to pause on this here.
Okay.
Our state, New York, wants to set up, and they have some places where you can go and you could shoot your heroin.
I saw that.
Safely.
And they
your
encouraged
heroin.
it.
This isn't a joint, which is, you know, still drugs.
Did you see the ad?
But you can go shoot heroin. You could do crystal meth. You could do coke, even lines.
Did you see the
and
ad?
They'll monitor you. And if you OD, they're there with the stuff to bring you back.
So here's the thing. In the ad, it said, like, basically, don't be ashamed. Just do it right.
Do it right. Yeah.
Do it right.
And I think that touches on
no gray
where's
area.
the hope in that?
Well, that touches also on that and contentment, because you're giving. It's kind of like if you always use GPS to find where you're going to go. If you never have it, you never know where you're going. You know, so if you're going to give people these opportunities, they're never going to know the true meaning of contentment, because it's just going to be you finding that next high or the next thing.
Well, the high is symbolic of our attitudes towards everything else. Like, it's very easy to be unchallenged. Like, withdrawing is very uncomfortable because it's one of the hardest challenges to go through. It's long term, but your environment is important. Like, I remember there were people saying things like, "Oh, well, make sure you do it when it's warm if you want to quit it," or when, you know.
There's a criteria.
Like there's no. Your best environment that you could have is being surrounded by people that are going to be honest to you,
truthful, right,
and truthful.
Yeah,
well, there is a physical side to this.
Oh, definitely.
Well, on any of these, because of our chemical reactions within our body.
But nothing's more powerful. But nothing's more powerful than the Word of God and Christ.
No, but I don't want people to misunderstand what we're saying. That God can do this.
No,
but in
that's
most
not what
cases,
I'm saying.
He doesn't instantaneously go
delivered.
Okay,
no,
you're
what
gone.
I'm saying is what he was saying is, like, you know, surrounding yourself with people. Sometimes what we do is say, you know what, there's got to be a right time for me to come to God. It's got to, I have to go fix myself.
Time is now.
I have to, you know, right. It's like, you should
That's
do
what
it
Sean
now.
told me.
No, I wasn't even going into what you were saying there.
No, but I get what you're saying. Yeah. So like I said, I went through 41 days, right? So I'm talking night sweat, pools, shaking, uncontrollable, jerking, felt like my knees were broken, but being surrounded by people that were always like, listen, are you good? You all right? Don't worry about it. It's going to be all right, man. God, you know, like that encouragement. I woke up with a smile every day. Like, what happens to some people, what happened to me was like, so when I was going through that, if I would eat, immediately when I would be finished eating and the nutrients would get in my body, I would immediately go through hardcore withdrawals and get very weak. And it was very bad. And I remember going through that, like, when is this going to be over? My skin crawled for like a year. My sense of smell was gone for like, was out of whack for like 2 years. And I remember going through all these things, but like, you know what though? If I'd had done this earlier, it would have been over by now.
I had the 4 shoulder surgeries, and I was probably on enough medication to kill a cow.
Yeah.
I was on tons of stuff.
Yeah.
And then with my doctor, we talked about it. I said, look, I'm addicted. And they go, oh, well, you should be addicted. That's what this stuff does. And I said, okay.
Wow.
They said, and they go, no, but the fact that you recognize that means that you're understanding your environment, that you're not looking for a quick high. And I said, well, instead of drooling out of the side of my face for the rest of my life, I said, can you bring me through a withdrawal plan? And we started, they actually had me cutting pills in halves and in quarters.
Yeah.
And it took me a good 6 weeks. And so I wasn't bouncing anything you said earlier.
Wow. That's
so what
great.
I was saying was, for those of you out there that may be so deep in and you don't have that hope yet, don't think it's just instantaneously going to just disappear.
It's not.
No,
it
it's
takes time, and you need the right people around you, and you need to understand the fact that there is an issue, and the only one that can bring you to the other side of that issue is, in fact, Jesus.
Amen.
That's the only one. But it's going to take work from your side, because your body, on a lot of these addictions, all different, even sexual addictions, you're going to go through physical, mental, and emotional withdrawals that can mentally and physically stifle
it's
you.
Similar to exercise, which I need definitely, because
we're talking about that.
I'm out of shape, but and I just hurt my shoulder over the weekend, so it's like, oh, that's another excuse. I just hurt my shoulder, so I can't start working out just yet. But it's the same thing. Like if you're going to want to be healthy, it's going to take work.
Yes.
If you want to come out of an addiction, it's going to take work.
Yes.
It's going to take discipline. It's going to take obedience to and others around you that can help you through that.
That's what I was going to say. Pay attention to the people that God puts in your life, because those are the first people you push away in addictions.
Right.
Because you don't want that accountability. And listen, it's not easy, and it's not going to be nice admitting, what you've gone through. But let me tell you, once you've gone through it, you're going to want to tell everybody what you went through. Yeah. And your story, let me tell you something. You're not going through what you're going through for you. You're going through it because you were created to be something better than you are, and you have the potential to help free a lot of people that are going through the same thing, because people don't want to hear anything that they can't relate to.
Can you give me a
boom?
Haven't
been there.
Give you a boom.
Yeah, it's a boom.
Chicka.
That was one of those deep thoughts right there.
Yeah. So and God has a plan for everyone. And once you realize that you are loved, that you are cared for, and that and when you discover that, people are going to turn on you that don't want to believe that. Listen, the more people that turn on you for it, that's proof that you're going in the right direction.
Yeah. And not only that, some people might see that, it's not going to be some extravagant thing. God might not have a plan what you think it is, but it's an eternal impact on someone's life. And it's eternal impact. So it's not like something where, God's going to make me famous and I'm going to give my story out to everybody. No, it's going to be that one person that you were meant to meet.
It's real.
And change that person's life.
And
that's all that matters.
And most of all, I can guarantee you something right now, 150%. If your life is going down the tubes, if everything that you thought that would make your life better is tearing you apart, I guarantee you right now, you follow God, you do exactly what he says, I guarantee your life will be awesome in no time. Yeah. It's going to take a little time, but I'm telling you, it's going to seem like no time once it flies by, because my life dramatically changed. When I came home, I had nothing. And I could not care I couldn't care. Like, oh, don't you need this? My wife was like,
but why is that? Because you were content no matter what.
Exactly. My wife was like, do you need a phone? I was like, I'm good. Like, I don't know. I don't need anything. Like I don't need it.
Yeah.
Like I walked on, like I purposely came home because I was addicted to drugs. I came home and I didn't even handle my money. I gave all my money to my wife at first because I didn't want to, I didn't want to take any chances. I learned to not give myself space for error.
And you also did that also for those that were around you, not to give them the opportunity to think something that was going to happen.
Exactly.
Right.
Because their peace of mind was shattered the moment I violated our relationship.
Yeah.
And you know what? And you know, if you're out there and you've made decisions like that and you've hurt people, just understand, like, forgiveness is real, but apologizing is not just for them. It's part of you saying, you know what, I recognize that I've done wrong. You can't wait for people to apologize to you to think that you're worthy of God's love. It's already there. Like, there's nothing you can do. It's already been done. All you have to do is just take it.
Right. And a part of that, I think that's what drives us to do those things, to head towards alcohol and drugs and things like that, because we have those inner things that we don't want to address.
Yeah.
So we turn to these things to kind of mask those feelings or anxieties or you know.
Yeah, we run towards death.
We run towards it, you know. Mm-hmm. It'll be there. Don't worry about
it. Like it's funny because like think about the most evil people in history. This is all like symbolic of our nature. Hitler didn't promise people glory, riches, anything. He says, I promise you struggle and death. Army built up like that. People were ready to follow him because it's in our nature to chase those things. But also look how evil the empire was. That's a standard right there that I don't think anybody should move towards. Everything is Star Wars with Rey.
It is.
Every single thing.
It is.
May the force be with you.
Yeah, I think we'll end it there. I mean, we touched on everything. You know,
I just the one last little button issue that we talked about earlier in biblical counseling, just for everybody to keep in their mind. If you find yourself doing the wrong things to get something, which, you know, we'd call as Christians sin,
manipulation.
You do something wrong to get it. Or if it's something you want and you don't get it and you do something wrong, like react in anger, you flip out, you go steal, whatever it is to get that thing, that is an idol. That is an addiction.
Yeah.
When you see yourself one way or the other, whether to get it or whether you don't get it, doing absolutely wrong, that's when you pause and say, okay, I have an issue.
Right.
That's when you know you're there with that issue.
Right.
And if you're afraid to confront that issue, just know you're always going to be afraid to confront it until you confront it.
Right. Because addiction is the shadow of idolatry.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what it is. Yeah.
But there is hope.
There is hope
Amen.
in Jesus.
There is always hope. And yes, Jesus can do it. And second of all, which is underneath that, but still equally important, you could hear that truth Wednesday nights at 8
Yes.
on Aletheia Radio, right here on the fabulous show we call Off the Books. I am your host, Cesar Santos.
And I am Sean Egan.
And that is Raimundo.
Raimundo.
So we'll catch you guys next week. We love you tons. We genuinely hope that people are being reached.
Yeah.
And listen.
Like us, support us.
Go to church.
Yep, go to church.
Stuff like
Continue in his word, and then be obedient.
Constantly renew your mind.
All right, guys.
Peace.